David thought he knew his wife, Isabella, until she turned their LA gala into a public stage for his humiliation. With one calculated toast, she demanded he choose, stay or walk away. As 50 strangers stared, David's world unraveled, revealing her chilling betrayal. But silence is his weapon, and the truth is his fight. Tonight, he begins to unravel her perfect lie. David Martinez had always been the guy who showed up. At 32, he was the software engineer who fixes neighbors' Wi-Fi on a Saturday, coached kids at the local coding club, and never missed a deadline at his tech startup in Los Angeles. His quiet reliability made him a rock for friends, coworkers, and especially his wife, Isabella, a rising star in the city's event planning scene. Together, they were the couple everyone envied. At least, that's what David thought until the night it all came crashing down. The evening started like any other in their Hollywood Hills home, alive with the buzz of a charity gala Isabella had spent weeks organizing. David wasn't much for crowds, but he supported her, always had. He'd spent the afternoon setting up tables, testing the sound system, and baking his signature lemon tart at her last-minute request. By 7 p.m., the house was packed with LA's elite, philanthropists, influencers, and faces David barely recognized. He moved through the crowd, offering drinks, smiling politely, blending into the background as Isabella shone. She was in her element, commanding the room with effortless charm. David watched her work the crowd, her laughter cutting through the hum of conversation. He felt a familiar pride, the kind that came from seeing her thrive, even if he stayed on the sidelines. But as the night wore on, something felt off. Isabella hadn't looked his way once. Not a glance, not a nod. When he caught her eye, she turned away, her attention fixed on a tall man in a sharp blazer. Ethan, a realtor she'd introduced as a work contact months ago. At 9:17 p.m., the mood shifted. Isabella stepped onto a small platform, glass of champagne in hand, and the room fell silent. David stood near the back, holding a tray of drinks, expecting her to thank the guests or pitch the charity. Instead, she turned her gaze on him, her smile sharp and unfamiliar. "I want to share something personal," she said, her voice carrying a rehearsed vulnerability. "David, you've been patient. So patient. But we've grown apart. I need to know, right now, in front of everyone, are we still in this? Stay and work it out or walk away. No hard feelings. Just choose." The room froze. 50 pairs of eyes locked onto David. A woman near the front whispered, "Is this real?" Someone else stifled a laugh. David's pulse pounded in his ears. The tray trembled in his hands, but he set it down carefully, refusing to let it crash. Isabella's stare was unrelenting, not pleading, not emotional, calculated. He searched her face for a trace of the woman he'd married, the one he'd spent 12 years building a life with, but all he saw was a stranger waiting for his response. He didn't give her one, not because he couldn't speak, but because he wouldn't. Not like this, not on her stage. David turned, his steps deliberate, and walked out the front door. No shoes, no jacket, just the cool night air hitting his face as he crossed the threshold. Behind him, the gala resumed. Glasses clinked. Laughter rose, as if his exit was just a minor hiccup in Isabella's performance. The betrayal wasn't just her words. It was the ease with which the room moved on, like he'd never been there. David drove to his sister Mia's downtown apartment, his hands gripping the steering wheel to keep them steady. Mia didn't ask questions when he showed up, just handed him a blanket and pointed to the couch. His phone buzzed. A text from Isabella. "You embarrass me." The words burned. She'd turned their marriage into a public spectacle, yet he was the one who'd embarrassed her. He powered off his phone, unwilling to let her rewrite the narrative. Sleep didn't come. David lay awake, replaying the moment, the way her voice had carried that false sincerity. He thought of the past 6 months, her late-night work dinners, the sudden disinterest in their shared routines, the way she'd brushed off his questions with a smile. He'd chalked it up to her career taking off, told himself he was being paranoid. But now, the pieces were falling into place, and they formed a picture he wasn't ready to face. By morning, anger replaced shock. David opened their joint banking app, something he hadn't checked in weeks, trusting Isabella with their finances. His stomach dropped. $15,000 was gone, transferred 4 days ago to a real estate firm in Santa Monica. The transaction note was vague, but the recipient's name stood out. Ethan Evans. The word contact. David's mind raced. He remembered seeing Ethan's black Audi parked outside their house twice in the past month. Once when Isabella claimed it was a client dropping off contracts. The lie was unraveling, and David wasn't going to wait for her to confess. He drove to the address listed in the transaction, a sleek loft complex in Santa Monica. Parked across the street, he watched as Isabella stepped out of the building, her arm linked with Ethan's. They laughed, her hand resting on his chest, his on her waist. It wasn't just a fling, it was a plan. David's chest tightened, but he didn't move. He wasn't here to confront them, not yet. He needed proof, something solid to anchor the storm in his head. Back at Mia's, he dug deeper. A quick search on his laptop revealed the lease agreement, publicly filed, with both Isabella's and Ethan's names. Signed 2 days before the gala. The money from their savings, money David had scrimped for their future, had funded Ethan's new apartment. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was financial, deliberate, and cold. Isabella hadn't just humiliated him. She'd been dismantling their life while he was still living it. David's phone buzzed again, this time a message from a mutual friend. Sarah, check Lily's post on Insta. You need to see this. He opened the app, and there it was, a viral post from Lily, a co-worker of Isabella's. It included screenshots of texts, photos of Isabella and Ethan at a Napa Valley retreat 3 weeks earlier, and a caption. Some people stage breakups like reality TV. David deserved better. The comments were flooding in, friends and strangers alike calling out Isabella's cruelty. For the first time, David felt seen, not as a prop in her story, but as a man who'd been wronged. He didn't smile, but something shifted. The silence he'd chosen wasn't weakness, it was power. And now, with the truth breaking free, David was ready to step out of the shadows and take back his story. David's world is rocked by Isabella's betrayal, exposed by a viral post revealing her affair with Ethan. With $15,000 stolen from their savings, David digs deeper, uncovering a web of lies that threatens to bury him. But as he tracks Ethan to a Santa Monica loft, a bold move sparks a confrontation that flips the script, pushing David to reclaim his life with a truth too sharp to ignore. David Martinez sat on his sister Mia's couch, the glow of his laptop screen casting shadows across the small downtown LA apartment. The viral Instagram post from Lily, Isabella's co-worker, had ripped the veil off his wife's affair with Ethan Evans, a slick realtor. Screenshots of their Napa Valley retreat, dated 3 weeks before Isabella's public ultimatum at the gala, burned in his mind. The comments, friends, strangers, even a former client of Isabella's, condemned her calculated cruelty. But it was the $15,000 missing from their joint savings that turned David's shock into resolve. That money, meant for their future, had funded Ethan's new Santa Monica loft. Isabella hadn't just betrayed him. She planned a new life while he was still in hers. David wasn't impulsive. At 32, he'd built a reputation as a steady software engineer, solving problems with code and patience. But patience wouldn't cut it now. He needed answers, and he wasn't waiting for Isabella to spin more lies. The lease agreement he'd found online listed Ethan's loft at a modern complex in Santa Monica, a short drive from Mia's place. By 10 a.m., David was parked across the street, watching the glass-fronted building. He didn't plan to barge in. He wasn't that guy, but he needed to see the life Isabella had chosen over theirs. At 10:42, Ethan stepped out, phone in hand, laughing into a call. David recognized him from the gala, the way he leaned too close to Isabella, his confidence bordering on arrogance. David's fingers tightened on the steering wheel, but he stayed put. Then Isabella appeared, slipping out of a black Audi, Ethan's car. She handed him a folder, their hands brushing longer than necessary. David's chest tightened, but he snapped a photo with his phone, time-stamped proof of their connection. This wasn't paranoia. It was evidence. Back at Mia's, David dug into their financial trail. Logging into their joint credit card account, he found a $7,300 charge from 5 days ago, linked to the same real estate firm as the savings transfer. The note read, rental deposit, Evans/Langston. Isabella's maiden name stung like a fresh cut. She'd already started erasing their marriage. David cross-referenced the dates. The lease was signed 2 days before the gala. The transfer executed the day after. Isabella hadn't just planned her exit. She'd choreographed it, down to the public humiliation meant to make him look like the one who walked away. Mia, who'd been quietly supportive, finally spoke up. "She's playing chess, David. You're not a pawn anymore." Her words lit a fire. David called the real estate firm, posing as a bank representative verifying the transaction. The receptionist confirmed Ethan's move-in date and added, "Ms. Langston co-signed the lease." Said her partner was relocating for work. Partner. The word landed like a punch. Isabella had lied to everyone, not just him. David's next move was risky but calculated. He drove back to the loft, heart pounding, and knocked on Unit 3B. Ethan opened the door, casual in joggers, his expression shifting from confusion to recognition. "You're David," he said, not a question. David nodded, keeping his voice steady. "We need to talk about the $15,000 you're living on." Ethan's smirk faltered. He stepped aside, letting David in. The apartment was sparse, just a couch and a few wine bottles on the counter, but a familiar scarf, Isabella's, draped over a chair confirmed her presence. Ethan leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Look, man, I don't want drama. Isabella said you two were done months ago." David's jaw tightened. "She used our savings for this place. Told you it was her bonus?" Ethan's eyes widened, then narrowed. "She said it was her money." David pulled out his phone, showing the bank statement with his name on it. Ethan rubbed his jaw, unease creeping into his posture. "She told me you were dragging your feet on the separation." "That's a lie," David said, his voice low but firm. "I found out about you at a gas station 3 days ago." Ethan shifted, clearly rattled. David pressed on. "She staged that gala speech to make me the villain. But you're not the hero here. You're just the guy who believed her." Ethan didn't respond, his silence a crack in his confidence. David left, feeling a strange clarity. He wasn't just a victim. He was a witness, and he was done being silent. Back at Mia's, David's phone buzzed with notifications. Lily's post had spread, now with hundreds of comments. A new one caught his eye, from a stranger named Rachel, who worked with Isabella on events. "I heard her rehearse that speech 2 nights before the gala," Rachel wrote. She said it had pushed David to decide. It was all planned. The revelation hit hard. Isabella hadn't just betrayed him. She'd scripted his humiliation like a reality show twist. David's anger wasn't loud, but it was sharp, fueling his next step. He called Claire, a divorce lawyer recommended by a coworker. Claire's office was a no-nonsense space in Century City, and her questions were direct. "When did you notice the money missing?" she asked, pen poised. David laid out the timeline. The gala, the transfer, the lease, Lily's post. Claire's eyes narrowed when he mentioned the disabled bank alerts. "She planned this for weeks, maybe months," Claire said. "We'll file for divorce and request a forensic audit of your accounts. You'll likely recover most of the funds." As David left Claire's office, his phone buzzed again. A text from Isabella. "You're making this ugly. Stop." He didn't reply. She wanted control, but he was done handing it over. That night, he started a note on his phone, listing every lie, every date, every detail. The late-night meetings, the Napa retreat, the scarf in Ethan's apartment. It wasn't for revenge. It was for truth, a record to keep him from doubting himself again. By morning, another post surfaced, this time from a friend of Ethan's, hinting at his own history of shady deals. David realized Isabella wasn't the only one playing games. Ethan might not be the innocent pawn he seemed. The web of lies was bigger than David had imagined, and he was just starting to untangle it. David's confrontation with Ethan exposes Isabella's lies, but a new social media bombshell reveals Ethan's own secrets, tightening the noose around their deception. As David uncovers a calculated plot to erase him, he faces a choice: expose their betrayal or rise above it. With the truth closing in, a tense showdown at a public event threatens to shatter Isabella's facade for good. David Martinez had never been one for confrontation, but standing in Ethan's Santa Monica loft, showing him the bank statement that proved Isabella used their joint savings, felt like reclaiming a piece of himself. Ethan's uneasy silence confirmed what David suspected. He wasn't the only one deceived. At 32, David, a Los Angeles software engineer, was done being the silent partner in his own life. Isabella's public ultimatum at their Hollywood Hills gala, demanding he choose to stay or leave, had been a scripted humiliation, but the viral Instagram post from her coworker Lily, exposing her affair with Ethan, had shifted the narrative. Now, David was piecing together a betrayal that ran deeper than he'd imagined. Back at his sister Mia's downtown apartment, David's phone buzzed relentlessly. Lily's post, with screenshots of Isabella and Ethan at a Napa Valley retreat 3 weeks before the gala, had exploded online, shared by friends and strangers alike. A new comment from a user named Jenna caught his eye. Ethan's not clean either. Ask about his business deals at Coastal Realty. David's pulse quickened. He'd assumed Ethan was just a pawn in Isabella's game, but this hinted at something bigger. A quick search revealed Coastal Realty, Ethan's employer, was under scrutiny for shady property flips. David saved the link, sensing another layer to the puzzle. He met with his lawyer, Claire, in her Century City office the next morning. Claire, sharp and methodical, reviewed the financial evidence. The $15,000 transfer from David's savings and the $7,300 credit card charge for Ethan's loft, both tied to Isabella's name. She disabled your bank alerts to hide the transactions, Claire said, her pen tapping the desk. We'll file for divorce and request a court-ordered audit. If Ethan's involved in fraud, that could strengthen your case. David nodded, his resolve hardening. He wasn't just fighting for money. He was fighting for the truth. That afternoon, David dug into Ethan's background. Public records showed Ethan had been named in a lawsuit last year, accused of inflating property values for quick sales. A buried forum post from a former client claimed he'd charmed his way into deals, only to vanish when payments fell through. David cross-referenced the dates. Ethan's Coastal Realty job overlapped with Isabella's work events where she'd met him. The Napa retreat wasn't just an affair. It was a business trip, possibly a cover for something shadier. David's stomach churned. Had Isabella been complicit in Ethan's schemes, using their savings as a buy-in? His phone pinged with a new message from Rachel, the event staffer who'd revealed Isabella's rehearsed gala speech. I found something else, she wrote, attaching an email thread between Isabella and Ethan, forwarded from shared work account. The emails, dated a month before the gala, discussed a joint investment in a Santa Monica property, Ethan's loft. Isabella wrote, once we're clear, we can start fresh. He won't suspect. David's blood ran cold. The gala wasn't just a breakup stunt. It was a distraction to cover their financial play. David's next move came unexpectedly. Sarah, a mutual friend, texted about a charity auction in West Hollywood that night, hosted by Isabella's firm. She's there with Ethan, Sarah added. Everyone's talking about Lily's post. You should come. David hesitated. He wasn't one for public scenes, but this was a chance to see Isabella's reaction now that her lies were unraveling. He drove to the venue, a sleek rooftop space buzzing with LA socialites. He stayed low-key, slipping in with a crowd of donors, his eyes scanning for Isabella. She was at the center of the room, working the auction with her usual charm, but her smile was tight, her glances darting. Ethan stood nearby, chatting with the group, his confidence dimmed. David caught Sarah's eye. She nodded toward a tablet displaying auction items, including a consulting package from Coastal Realty, donated by Ethan. David's gut twisted, another potential scam, branded as charity. He snapped a photo of the listing, noting the fine print. Proceeds to Coastal Realty Trust. Suspicious, he emailed it to Claire on the spot. As the auctioneer called for bids, David saw his moment. He approached a co-worker of Isabella's, Tom, who'd commented on Lily's post. Know anything about Ethan's trust? David asked quietly. Tom frowned. It's a front. I overheard him bragging about funneling donations to offshore accounts. David's heart raced. He stepped closer to the stage, where Isabella was presenting the next item. Their eyes met. Her face froze, then hardened, as if daring him to speak. David didn't take the bait. Instead, he texted Claire, check Coastal Realty Trust. Possible fraud linked to Ethan and Isabella. As he turned to leave, Isabella's voice cut through the chatter, announcing the realty package. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Lily's post had reached the guests. A woman near David whispered, Isn't that the guy from the affair post? Isabella's composure cracked, her hand gripping the podium. Ethan shifted uncomfortably, avoiding her glance. David walked out, the night air cool against his skin. He didn't need to confront her publicly. She'd done that to herself. His phone buzzed, a reply from Claire. Got it. If the trust is fraudulent, we'll tie it to the stolen funds. Stay sharp. David felt a surge of clarity. He wasn't just exposing Isabella's betrayal. He was dismantling the life she'd built on lies. As he drove back to Mia's, another post surfaced online, this time from a former Coastal Realty client, alleging Ethan had scammed them on a property deal. The comments exploded, tagging Isabella as his partner in crime. David didn't gloat. He opened his notes app, adding the auction, Tom's tip, and the new post to his timeline. Each entry was a brick in the case he was building, not for revenge, but for justice. Isabella had underestimated him, thinking his silence meant weakness. But David was done shrinking. The showdown wasn't over, and he was ready for what came next. David's quiet strength exposes Isabella's lies as her affair with Ethan unravels at a public auction. Now, with evidence of their fraud mounting, social media erupts, tearing down Isabella's facade. As David builds a legal case with his lawyer, a surprise ally emerges, threatening to tip the scales. But when Isabella strikes back with a desperate move, David must decide how far he'll go to protect his future. David Martinez had spent years fading into the background, but the rooftop charity auction in West Hollywood marked a turning point. The viral Instagram post from Isabella's co-worker Lily, exposing her affair with Ethan Evans, had sparked a firestorm online. David, a 32-year-old Los Angeles software engineer, had uncovered more than infidelity. Isabella had siphoned $15,000 from their joint savings to fund Ethan's Santa Monica loft, and a $7,300 credit card charge tied her to a shady real estate deal. The auction's charity package from Ethan's Coastal Realty, flagged as a potential front, had David's lawyer, Claire, digging into possible fraud. David's silence wasn't surrender, it was strategy. Back at his sister Mia's downtown apartment, David's phone buzzed with notifications. The online chatter had grown louder, with a new post from a former Coastal Realty client accusing Ethan of scamming them on a property deal. Commenters tagged Isabella, calling her his accomplice. David added the post to his growing timeline of evidence, each entry a step toward reclaiming his life. Claire called, her voice brisk. "The Coastal Realty Trust is a shell company," she said. "I've got a forensic accountant tracing the funds. If Isabella's tied to this, we'll prove misappropriation." David felt a flicker of hope. Justice was within reach. But Isabella wasn't done. At 8:13 a.m., David received a text from her. "You're destroying my career. Meet me at the house, 10 a.m. Let's end this like adults." The word adults echoed her gala speech, a jab meant to provoke. David hesitated. He didn't trust her, but ignoring her risked escalating her desperation. He agreed, texting Claire first, "Meeting Isabella. Keep the audit moving." Claire replied, "Record everything. Stay calm." David arrived at their Hollywood Hills home, the place where Isabella's ultimatum had shattered him. The front door was unlocked, the house eerily quiet. Isabella sat at the kitchen counter, scrolling her phone, unfazed. "You've been busy," she said, not looking up. "Spreading lies, turning everyone against me." David stayed by the door, phone in his pocket, secretly recording. "I didn't spread anything," he said. "Lily's post did. The truth did." Isabella's eyes flicked to him, sharp but unsteady. "You think you're clever? Digging into Ethan's business? You're out of your depth." David kept his voice even. "I know about the $15,000, the lease, the Napa trip. You plan to leave me long before the gala." She laughed, a brittle sound. "You were checked out, David. Always coding, always quiet. Ethan offered something real." David didn't flinch. "He offered a scam, and you used our money for it." Her composure cracked. "You can't prove that," she snapped, but her hand shook as she set down her phone. David pressed on. "The audit will. Coastal Realty's trust is a front, and your name's on the lease." Isabella stood, pacing. "If you push this, I'll say you authorized the transfer. Who'll believe you over me?" David's jaw tightened, but he didn't take the bait. "The bank records will," he said, "and so will Rachel's emails." Isabella froze. She hadn't expected him to know about the event staffer who'd exposed her rehearsed gala speech. David left, heart pounding, but steady. Back at Mia's, he forwarded the recording to Claire, who confirmed it strengthened their case. "She admitted to the transfer indirectly," Claire said. "We're close to proving intent." But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. At noon, David received an email from Jenna, the commenter who'd first hinted at Ethan's shady deals. She wasn't just a bystander. She was a former Coastal Realty accountant who'd been fired after questioning Ethan's books. "I have documents," she wrote, attaching ledgers showing offshore transfers linked to the trust, with Isabella's signature on 3 transactions. David's mind raced. Jenna's evidence was a game changer, tying Isabella directly to Ethan's fraud. He met Jenna at a quiet Pasadena coffee shop the next day. She was nervous but resolute, sliding a USB drive across the table. Ethan used charity events to launder money, she said. Isabella knew. She helped him target donors. David's stomach turned. The gala, the auction, it was all part of their scheme. He thanked Jenna, promising to protect her identity, and sent the files to Claire. The online firestorm grew. A local news blog picked up Lily's post, linking it to Coastal Realty's investigation. Isabella's event planning firm issued a statement distancing itself from her, and clients began pulling contracts. David's phone buzzed with another text from Isabella. "You win. Call off the dogs." He didn't respond. She wasn't pleading, she was bargaining, and David was done negotiating. That night, Claire called with an update. The accountant traced the $15,000 to an offshore account tied to Ethan's trust. "We filed a motion to freeze it." David exhaled, the weight of months lifting slightly. But the victory felt hollow. Isabella's betrayal wasn't just personal. It was a calculated erasure of their life together. He opened his notes app, adding Jenna's documents and Isabella's threats. Each entry grounded him, a reminder he wasn't the one who'd lost his way. As David prepared for bed, Mia handed him a flyer for a coding boot camp for underprivileged teens starting next month. "You're good at helping people," she said. "Start there." David nodded, a spark of purpose igniting. Isabella's world was crumbling, but David's was just beginning to rebuild. The fight wasn't over, but for the first time, he felt like he was writing the ending. David's evidence buries Isabella and Ethan's fraud, leaving her empire in ruins. As the divorce looms, a final confrontation tests his resolve. With the truth now public, David faces a choice: cling to bitterness or build anew. In a quiet moment, he finds strength not in revenge, but in reclaiming his story, proving silence can rebuild what betrayal destroyed. David Martinez stood at the edge of a new chapter, the weight of Isabella's betrayal no longer crushing but clarifying. The Los Angeles software engineer, 32, had unraveled his wife's calculated affair with Ethan Evans, a shady realtor, and their scheme to siphon $15,000 from their joint savings for Ethan's Santa Monica loft. A viral Instagram post by Isabella's co-worker Lily, coupled with damning evidence from Jenna, a former Coastal Realty accountant, exposed their fraud tied to a fake charity trust. David's lawyer, Claire, had traced the stolen funds to an offshore account, and with a court motion to freeze it, Isabella's world was collapsing under the scrutiny of social media and local news. The divorce papers arrived at Mia's downtown apartment, where David had been staying since the gala, where Isabella publicly humiliated him with her ultimatum to stay or leave. The documents were stark, legal, final. Claire called to confirm. The audit linked Isabella's signatures to 3 offshore transfers. "We've recovered $12,000 and the rest is pending." She's facing civil charges for misappropriation. David exhaled, the numbers grounding him. Justice wasn't emotional. It was methodical, and he'd built the case brick by brick. Isabella's final move came unexpectedly. She requested a meeting at a neutral spot, a downtown LA coffee shop, claiming she wanted to settle quietly. David agreed, not out of hope, but to close the door for good. He arrived early, phone recording as Claire advised. Isabella sat across from him, her usual poise frayed, her fingers tapping the table. "You've ruined everything," she said, voice low. "My clients are gone. My firm dropped me. Ethan's under investigation. Happy?" David met her gaze. "You did that, not me. You used our money, planned it all before the gala." She leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "I'll tell the court you agreed to the transfers. I've got texts, emails, proof you were supportive." David didn't flinch. "Those are fabricated, and Claire's ready to prove it. The ledgers, the lease, Jenna's files, they all point to you." Isabella's bravado cracked. She slumped back, silent. For the first time, David saw her not as a mastermind, but as someone scrambling to salvage her narrative. "You could have talked to me," she muttered. David shook his head. "You didn't want a conversation. You wanted a stage." He stood, leaving her with the bill and the truth. The fallout was swift. Isabella's firm issued a public apology, citing her personal misconduct. Ethan's Coastal Realty faced a formal investigation, with Jenna's ledgers triggering a probe into his offshore accounts. Social media buzzed with updates, some calling David a hero, others pitying him. He ignored both, focusing on the legal win. Claire secured a settlement, returning the full $15,000 and nullifying Isabella's claim to their shared assets. The divorce was finalized, clean and uncontested, as Isabella's credibility crumbled. David moved into a modest Pasadena apartment, a fresh start away from the Hollywood Hills house that no longer felt like home. He signed up to lead a coding boot camp for underprivileged teens, channeling his knack for problem-solving into something meaningful. At a local farmer's market, he stopped at a stall selling handmade journals. One caught his eye, navy blue with a simple embossed phrase, "You don't need to be loud to be heard." He bought it, not for sentiment, but as a reminder of his own voice. That night, David opened the journal and wrote, not about Isabella, but about himself. He listed plans: a solo train trip to Colorado, learning guitar, reconnecting with college friends he'd neglected during the marriage. Each word felt like reclaiming ground he'd lost to years of shrinking for her. Mia, ever his anchor, handed him a rewritten recipe for his lemon tart, the one he'd baked for the gala. "Make it for you this time," she said. David smiled, the first real one in months, and started mixing ingredients, the act grounding him in the present. The online storm faded, but David's post in the same thread as Lily stood out, a quiet recounting of his journey from betrayal to clarity. It wasn't for sympathy. It was for anyone who'd ever felt erased in their own life. Messages poured in, from strangers who'd faced similar betrayals to old friends offering support. One came from Jenna. "You showed me it's okay to speak up. Thank you." David didn't reply, but her words settled into him, a confirmation that his silence had built bridges, not walls. Weeks later, David stood by a lake in Colorado, the trip he'd planned in his journal. The water was still, the air crisp, and for the first time, his mind didn't race with what-ifs or regrets. He'd signed the divorce papers, recovered his money, and exposed the truth without shouting. Isabella and Ethan faced their consequences, her career in tatters, his under legal scrutiny, while David walked forward. He wasn't the man who'd left the gala in silence. He was the man who turned silence into strength. Back in Pasadena, David baked the lemon tart for Mia's birthday, sharing it with her and a few friends. The first bite was sharp, sweet, his own. As laughter filled the room, he realized he wasn't rebuilding from ruins. He was building something new, something his. The journal lay open on his counter, a single line written that morning: "I'm not waiting anymore."